Welcome to, oh, Dwayne O'Brien, yes. I think the recording is going to start with Dwayne O'Brien, yes.
Hi, I'm here, sorry.
Hey, you're good. Welcome. We're just kicking off the value meeting, value working group. Agenda is added into the chat there, so hop on in. If you have things that you'd like to discuss, let's just add it on top and throw your name on the list here with some sort of way of saying how you're feeling or what's going on. State of the source. Couple things that pre-populated the agenda. We reviewing and closing the issues we last reviewed related to a metric that was kind of the union of a couple metrics we already have. There was a discussion in, now I'm forgetting the name of it, 108 that, yeah, Dwayne, you jumped into on organizational value that we may not work through the whole plan there, but I wanted to leave some space in this meeting to discuss that with Vinod for you to lead us through. And yeah, and Dwayne, you're here and we're talking about it. So I think that'll be really fun to dive into. And time pending, we can continue. We've been working through the copy of popularity based on other existing metrics. So we can continue the progress there. Other things on people's minds that they want to discuss or would like to see. Take that as a no. Awesome. I'll share my screen for a little if things play nicely. Good deal. Okay, so first up, there is a new metric proposed of popularity for living wage. It's pretty much the union of two things. We left it open for a couple weeks waiting for some commentary. Seth knows Joshua's not passionate about the way it's worded here, so just wanted to double check if anyone else had new ideas here or concerns, or whether it's safe to close. Going once, going twice. Done. Easy. All right. Next up, I'll stop sharing so we can just kind of go into discussion about going into the proposed metric, organizational value, business readiness rating. And yeah, there's been some conversation here. Vinod, why don't you kind of kick us off and others can jump in on.
Yeah, so should I share my screen? I think, will you share the screen? It was the same thing, so, or do you want me to share the screen?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yep, good to go.
Okay, yeah. So I was reading on this and I came across this, and at the same time the discussion on SMC was going on. Like we were looking at combining different atomic metrics we were developing in different working groups. So I came across this that it is like more focused towards the organization who want to use open source as an option. So how can they assess, like, drive the value from open source? Is like, what are the ways they can look and assess whether to go for this route and adopt open source in the organization, or internally develop a product like software, or hire through a third party? So I found this like very nicely drafted, where they looked at the different avenues to assess whether it's feasible to adopt an open source project or not. So that's where I propose this as like organizational value as a metric. So how they measure like functionality, they are giving some weightage, service support, documentation, and further in the discussion, it was kind of like dependency. So maybe I think like a dependency can be a part of that weightage, not entirely 100%, to assess whether to go for an open source project or not along those lines.
That is pretty fascinating. Cool. So, what are people's interests or reaction to this on first read?
This was primarily the ticket that I came that was interested to hear the discussion on today. I think there's a significant difference between the phrase organizational value and business readiness. You know, as I understood and remembered the this graphic that's on the screen right here, like this is more of an assessment about how appropriate the software might be to use in your business, but that's not the same thing as how much value that might create or that you might derive from that software for your business. Which I kind of expanded on the comments in the ticket for myself for what I'm chasing, which may or may not be in line with where this metric is headed, which is fine. But I'd be interested to hear sort of your thoughts on the distinction between, you know, business readiness and organizational value. And by way of example, a piece of software could be very much ready to use in production and very much ready to use for a business, but not generate much value or not be very valuable for the particular use case that you have it.
So a question on that, like if I assess, maybe the title might be different. We can in brainstorming can change the title. But my question is like, for example, if I assess a software that is ready for use in the production, if I'm using it in the production, that means I'm, as an organization, as a business, I'm getting value from it. Is it not that way?
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily, and I'm refreshing my memory now as I'm looking at the metrics that are used to put into Wasserman's composite there. Sorry.
No, you're good. This is pretty
I'm
deep.
also looking on my phone. Yeah, as we look kind of across those different metrics that are spelled out in that chart, none of them talk about solving a business problem. None of them talk about relevance to the problem that I'm trying to solve with my business.
Right.
None of them talk about, so, you know, function. It might work. It might have a great user experience. It might be well supported. There might be, you know, technical and architectural attributes of it that we like. It might be well documented. It might be community supported. And there might be an extensively well documented and well developed development process. But if it doesn't solve a problem for the business, it is just good software that we might use, but it isn't providing specific value for us, right? So, I'll give an example here, and I will give an example not based on where I work, but I think that is common across lots of organizations. Any organization that processes financial transactions has a small handful of projects at their organization that's going to be responsible for processing those transactions, and that software has to be very, very solid, and the dependencies that go into that software are going to be of inherently more value to that organization than the dependencies or other software that might go into managing tickets for the business, which still might save time, but it's just not the same kind of business value, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. But this was more on the first step, whether I should select that particular financial software, which is of very much importance to me, and assess whether that software can be of value to me or not? Should I adopt it or should I use it as a first pass?
I don't
kind
think.
of oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. Kid.
I was just going to. I was going to say. I think I agree with what Dwayne is saying. I don't. Yeah, I don't see this metric as a as representing organizational value at all. It's more of kind of a complex way to view the usability of a piece of software. Right? So the value that it provides is something else entirely, and this is just kind of a kind of an advanced usability scale, right? So when I look at this software, it provides these things. So it might help me pick between 2 or 3 pieces of software. However, nothing in here really tells me that it's providing me business or organizational value.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Is that similar to what you were saying, Dwayne?
Yeah, that's very much in the vein of what I'm talking about.
Let me clarify one thing. This organizational value is the focus area where I have proposed this metric, not as a title for the metric. The title is Business Readiness Rating for Open Source.
Yeah, I was just about to point that out, Vinod, that I was wondering if people are getting caught up in that. I'm going to remove it from the title because it's Business Readiness Rating. And what I like about this is that it will, assuming the person making the assessment is aligned to the business, massive assumption in any industry, but assuming that case, this could be an interesting tool on how to assess multiple technologies that are going to solve a given problem. It's like that was the bias I had. It will not address the definition of, is this valuable to my organization in and of itself? But like, if you've already identified something that is valuable, then here is another methodology to assess its value. Or its value relative to other things you've determined as valuable. So in that way, I think it's interesting.
For me, putting the bracket was like, since we have focus area, how individual assess the value, how organization assess the value, or how other stakeholders assess the value. So I propose that from the business perspective, that how businesses can assess one of the ways of particular an open source project, like assessing the readiness of that open source project to adopt or not to adopt in their organization.
And a reminder, organizational value in this situation is defined as the goal to identify if a project is monetarily valuable for from an organization's perspective. So is this a good investment? So with that lens, I see like these categories are more granular ways of saying, is this a good assessment? In my mind, I welcome disagreement for sure.
Thanks for that clarification. I think you're right, Matt, that we're a little hung up on the focus area versus the name of the overall or the proposed overall metric. Has anyone talked to Dr. Wasserman since he drafted this? I haven't had a chance to review the other papers that have linked below, but like, he's out there and available. I'd be interested to hear if his thinking has evolved.
Yeah.
That's a great point. That's one of those moments you're like, this is a real person we could reach out to. Vinod, do you have any connection or have you reached out?
No, I was reading my reading list and I came across it and I found like right fit for this focus area. I just proposed it and I was like, if it is interested, then we can move ahead and contact him or not. I was in that frame of mind.
That's a great point. Maybe that's a good kind of question to think of next steps is, do people think in the context that we just derived, like, is this interesting enough to take the next step of not trying to connect with the author and help, see if he still stands behind it?
I'm the new person here. I don't know what the process is, but I think it's at least worth
It's
a conversation.
it's exceptionally democratic, and or yeah, whatever autocracy where people just say things and we do it. No, yeah, we're just exploring things. So I just want to get some gut checks on whether it's on its relevancy. Yeah, I'm +1 as well.
I'm too. Like for me, it feels a perfect match. Since we have so many atomic metrics, we can use them and help the organization in assessing an open source project. That is one of the kind of a goal of CHAOSS itself is like help different stakeholders to assess the health of an open source project so that they can make an informed decision.
So do they, in the paper, do they actually define what some of the metrics are within these categories? Or
Yeah.
are these just really high level abstract things where if we dig into this, we're going to have to define 10 new metrics in each category, and how do we assess functionality in a non-contextual way?
I think in the paper they have defined in a little bit detail too, and they have tried to adopt it. Like I found it from Internet Archive, it was not even available. So to figure it out, I have searched it in the Internet Archive. This is where I found this particular paper. So like if we look at the assess the cost, close links, and different these sections, and they're going in the like uh, uh, detail into it.
Yeah, I'm with Kevin on this of like yeah, it's interesting from the high level, and then we're always trying to map it down to what we have been throwing around as a term of the atomic metrics, like the raw bits that we're going to add up to this synthesized idea of value. And kind of Sean's done a good bit of this with the SCMS project of so maybe Vinod, if the steps in my mind are like, do we have the metrics that would add up to build this, or are there missing ones we'd have to add in? But maybe before spending too much of your life in that, it would be fun to connect with the author and try to, 2005 was a long time ago by open source definitions.
Yeah. Yes.
It'd be cool to see where they stand these days, and if they'd want to contribute to CHAOSS through you. That could be a really interesting win.
Yeah.
Awesome. Sean, did you have something you want to add
in? No. I'm just this is a lot to take in.
Fair. Yeah, it's a beastly context.
I think it's a nice framework. I just worry that it's a little too abstract.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely a nice way of looking at it.
Yeah, I didn't get into enough detail myself, but I'm also interested in like, are these weights just kind of somewhat magical, like they're just proposed in the paper as appropriately weighted, or are they based on some other sort of metric?
If these scores are based on the context of whoever's using it, then the question becomes: is this framework more like the SCMS, where it's a method that is it a program rather than a composite metric? Right?
Yeah.
Is it a way of assessing these assessing the business readiness rather than actually a composite metric? So
I think they have implemented in the Intel, I guess that's what I recall from the papers, that it was implemented and they were trying to assess it and use it more, but I'm not sure exactly on that. So,
Honestly, my favorite.
and
Oh, go for it.
sorry, further on that, if we fit like maybe a different organization, depending on their context, can realign the weightage and maybe some refining to it. But it's a way of looking at the an open source project.
Yeah, and I want to share again because I think one of the gems that came up just in the conversation here is Sean's way of talking about risk assessment around dependencies. And you'll have to excuse my ignorance here. I don't know if we have measurements around that, but currently in any of the working groups, so that is a really interesting category of challenge.
In this regard, I think in yesterday's session of evolution working group, we have started discussing the dependencies, like different kinds of dependency. Evolution working group has started looking at like library dependencies or platform dependencies.
That's really cool. Okay, so I'll just add, oops, not a file, whoops, but cool.
Maybe
Well,
you
thanks,
could share the link to the paper as well.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
gotta say, it's like I don't even remember making this comment.
You're
Oh,
just
is
in
it
the
already
zone,
there?
man.
Yeah,
the links of the paper are in the issue in the
Oh,
start
gotcha.
date.
Oh, that
Yeah.
is a wall of text. That is a giant link.
Yeah.
This is a
The longer
modified
the link, the
version.
higher quality it is.
Yeah.
Like, that's
The original paper is the first one. Second one is a modified version by some other author on the same metric.
One of the things that that the authors might be able to tell us is if they have either anecdotes or other people that we can talk to that they know have applied it in their own context and what they've learned along the way, because I think that would be illuminating for the conversation. Like who's used this and can they point to
Okay.
examples where it's been out in the wild?
Okay.
great. Anything else to dig into on organizational or on business readiness? Good deal. All right. Well, next up, agenda-wise, since kind of we've been, wait, what is this? That is the wrong link. Anyway, when I kind of helped take over this working group and start to review what metrics are around, we had a popularity metric that was merged but doesn't have anything in it, mostly TBDs, and we've been drafting a revision. Wanted to, for those that are interested, take the back half of this meeting and kind of working meeting, socialize through what this looks like, get some live feedback. So if that's interesting to you, let's stay on and do so. If that's not what you want to get into, it's okay to drop as well. But I think we'll just use the back half for a working meeting. And so project popularity, I think Matt got the first draft of this together, Matt G, that is. Okay. Yeah, maybe we can add some context around this. And I guess we don't do this too often, so it'd be good to remind people of kind of the ground rules, which is you are welcome to kind of offer any suggestions that you think would improve the metric. It's in a draft form, we can talk through it. Feel free to jump in and ask questions or to help lead the discussion in a direction you think is useful. I'll keep sharing for those that are on video watching the recording, but you can pop out and add comments in firsthand. Where did the living wage thing get into this? Yeah, definitely a little confused as to, for project popularity, where it landed in what working group we thought, or what focus area we thought it made sense in. I think it was individual and organizational, which was the challenge of it. So taking a step back, like what audience are we building this for? We have the 4 focus areas: social value, popularity is probably not a good fit there. Organizational value, that is a potential, since companies may invest or not invest based on how popular a project is. Individual value, I think that was the bias we were working from originally, of thinking, you know, should I learn, say, Kubernetes or some alternative to it? They're like OpenStack. Like, hey, I've seen jobs listing both of these. Which one's more popular? Which one should I invest my time in?
I think it makes more sense in organizational value, but as far as writing it goes, we could probably include individuals and organizations may be interested in knowing the project popularity. But it probably fits best in organizational value.
And could you add a little spice on why, in your opinion? Yeah.
Well, from an organizational standpoint, I think project popularity is almost always a plus. From an individual standpoint, project popularity may be a plus. It may also be a minus, right? So the more popular a project is, the harder it may be to engage or to get your contributions included, right? So viewing project popularity as a good thing for individual value is may not be completely accurate. So I'm maybe just it's easier to frame it around organizational value, because project popularity is probably just a positive for organizational value.
Yeah, I completely follow what you're saying there. Yeah, and I guess looking through the lens of popularity for an organization, I don't think it's all encompassing, but it's the anecdotes I have with some pretty big brand, like probably the only brand name anyone knows that I worked for in the past. They loved seeing GitHub stars, but not in and of itself. It was only relative to other GitHub stars of like past projects. So it was the project I helped launch had more stars in the first day than all other projects had in the first 5 years of their existence. And it also had more stars than the competitor projects from competitive companies. And our executives absolutely love that. I don't quite know how to capture that, but I just figured I'd throw that out there. Other people have anecdotes or thoughts around what does it mean to be popular?
Only at the risk of potentially rehashing an old conversation, which is that popularity is I would say maybe a low value way to describe what we're going after here, because there's how widely installed is something, and there's how widely used is it compared to its counterparts, and those things are not going to be the same across ecosystems. And then there's how well liked is the project. And by way of example, and one I think that you'll recognize, I know a lot of people who love Hoodie.js as a project. I don't know anyone who uses it, right? And so you might say that it's very popular, and there might be metrics that you can point to that indicate its popularity, but that's tangled up here with maybe usage or deployment or installation in a way that might muddy what we're trying to chase in the metric.
Yeah, I agree with that. If you go down and look at the implementation, all of the metrics that are included in that, it feels like based on that, it's kind of we're talking about popularity as a proxy for market share or usage a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's a conversation that needs to be had. I haven't been part of one related to this. I think we were very much assuming it was obviously needed as popularity because the term comes up often, but offering some clarity after what you just said, Dwayne, it seems like a pretty necessary step here. We got a lot of stuff kind of mushed together.
And to be clear, like I don't think popularity in the sense of how well liked it's a project is an invaluable metric. I think it is a very valuable metric.
Yeah.
A lot of the metrics or a lot of the implementations we see here that feed into it, we often describe as vanity metrics, and vanity and popularity have an interesting correlation to each other. Yeah, but like I said, I don't think popularity in that sense is not valuable, but it's not the same thing as widely used or widely deployed.
Yeah.
That's
I would call that a
project reputation. Project reputation versus some metric that's a proxy for market share.
So the way conversation is going on, I feel like it's a comparative metric than itself in an atomic metric. It's like you are comparing two things, like even a project with other projects in terms of market share or in terms of contributions or in terms of anything. So is it just a comparison?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with like this going a direction where we accept that, yeah, the vanity metric that it is often, maybe codifying like what people often mean when they say, hey, is this project popular? Acknowledging that that is a unclear definition, and they're generally saying like, is it popular relative to some collection of things, things being like atomic metrics that are then being compared to other atomic metrics for similar or related projects. Do you think there's a path there, or is that getting away from where you were going, Kevin?
Well, I think we split it. I think we need to split it into two separate metrics. One that deals with popularity from the standpoint of reputation, as Dwayne was saying, and then one that deals with project popularity based on these activity metrics that can be kind of a proxy for market share, since we don't really have, we can't get that type of information, right? But they're both popularity. The question is, do we need to dig into popularity in that fashion, or could we just use a different term and avoid popularity altogether?
Great point.
But they're definitely two different questions, to Dwayne's point.
Yeah. My gut could be off, but my gut take on, do we need both or do we change the language? I kind of want to use the language that people use when they talk about metrics of a project, even if they are indescript on their own, and then provide like a path towards specificity. Because I imagine like the story I'm telling myself is that somebody's going to be looking around through CHAOSS and they're trying to get to the metric that they think should be there, which is popularity or something related to popularity. And if we don't provide some scaffolding for them to get to their idea of what they think they need versus our clear definition of it, I worry we'll kind of lose people in the practice.
Could we do something like that?
Yeah, that sits well for me at first, kind of to
Yeah.
acknowledge that it's kind of like a Wikipedia approach to this. Did you mean like this or this or this version of whatever word you just searched?
So maybe project popularity should be a metric, and the implementation can be in the reputation and the development and usage side.
I think those things are too. I think those things are way too different, and it would muddy the idea of project popularity as a metric. I think it needs to be two different metrics.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a good discussion point. We don't have to land on a single answer, but if other people have pros or against, I guess that was more of a question. Anyone else have pros or against? Same metric versus different ones?
I agree they should be different, but I don't think I have anything helpful to add.
Sure. Great. All right, well, what do you say we move forward under that assumption? Because it'll be certainly easy to merge them back together than to split them apart. Thank you, anonymous squirrel, whoever wrote that, sure. Thought we'd probably discuss it more, but it just kind of clicks as it'll be far easier to, yeah, to clean it up by merging than separating. So exciting. All right, well, I think we're getting towards like 5 minutes away from the end. So maybe we'll just take the next actions here of, I am happy to take point on separating the project popularity reputation. Is there anyone interested in drafting? Again, you'll have plenty of other people to review and help you, but is anyone interested in taking next steps on development and usage?
I'm gonna.
Okay.
How often do we meet? Every month?
Bi-weekly.
Bi-weekly.
Yeah. So, and we could pitch. We could reconnect in a month on this. There's no strong urgency. Just like to keep nudging it along for sure.
I'm happy to pencil my name next to this one with the understanding that there's maybe a 50% chance I won't get anything done in the next 2 weeks on it. In absence of no one, I'll jot my name down and take a swing at it.
Awesome. Thank you, Dwayne.
Thanks, Dwayne.
Well, yeah, I'm going to make this exceptionally messy. Say project popularity, development, and usage, and then I hope this smoothly works. Probably going to break some stuff. Oh, project popularity, what do we call it? Reputation. Reputation. Great. Well, that's something. I'm really pleased with that, and we're bringing clarity to. I mean, the most common thing I hear in open source circles of like the arguments around, well, this project is more popular, I should use it. As simple as that logic is, that is logic that we lean on for sure. So it'd be good to answer that straight on. Anyone else have like closing thoughts or two for wrapping up? Open questions, things for next time? Well, that wraps it up. Thank you all for joining us. Hope you have a great state of the state if you're part of the OSI event going on today. And if you're not, you should be. Check it out. And yeah, we'll see you at the next meeting in a couple of weeks or through issues for any asynchronous updates. That's a wrap.
Yeah.